So UPE Code, our second game development workshop and lead up to the Global Game Jam. So our goal as the club is to teach software development skills through our workshops. We have 4 tracks. It says current for 2 of them, but actually we're going to do all of them every semester now. I'll talk about that a little more later on. The main benefits is that we have a really, really large community, and that community helps you grow in terms of not just code, but other ones. But going involved in one program helps you a lot with that one aspect of your computer science and your computer science career, code helps you with programming, and then design would help you with UI and UX. So Game Dev 2, we're going to need Unity, which we used last workshop, and we're going to need Visual Studio Code or some text editor. I know older versions of Unity actually come with the text editor. And then here is our upcoming workshop. So we have code orientation next Wednesday, but that's only for members. So if you apply to the program, which there's a slide coming up for the applications, it ends tonight at midnight. So if you guys want to apply, suggest applying today, now. We also have the web development workshop that's going to happen February 19th, and our machine learning and AI workshop that's March 19th. Then we'll have our surprise workshop, which it's got a little bit of surprise and it's got a little bit of mobile development. That's going to happen April 2nd. And then we're going to have our track meetups every single Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to alternate between the 2. So after next week, which is orientation, the following week, we're going to have AI, machine learning, and web dev that week, and then it's going to go game mobile the next one. So our first AI machine learning one is going to be, let me look at the calendar. If our orientation is the 3rd, then the first AI one is going to be the 9th of February, and the first web dev one is going to be 11th. And then it's just going to alternate between the 2 every single week. So to become a member of UPE, that's the link. And to apply to the programs, that's the link for the programs. And I'll type it in the chat too. That way you guys don't have to type too much. Okay, again, the code deadline is today at midnight. So if you want to apply, apply. This is our Discord and this is our social media if you guys want to follow. And you guys should put your LinkedIns in the chat so that you guys can all connect and get more connections, because one of the main things with computer science and stuff is networking. So it's really important to network. So I'll take a second for you guys to put your LinkedIns in the chat and stuff, and I'll save the chat at the end and add you all as well. That's also mine. If you guys add me, then I'll just I'll add you back. I connect you back. All right, I think that's more than enough time. So first, the assets download. Let me actually open this in presenter view, so I have the little thingy that gives me the link. Okay, so our assets, come store our stuff, assets download, here it goes. Here's the Google Drive for it. So basically when you open up the Google Drive, it's going to look like this. We're going to have 5 different things. We're going to have an assets folder, which is just from last workshop. If you did last workshop and yours looks just like last workshops, meaning we don't have a background down, we don't have the character being able to jump, he can jump infinitely, and max speed isn't set yet. So just like the basic movement and stuff, then you're going to want to download the assets folder if you don't have those. If you participate in the last one, you don't need to download it. It's just for those that didn't participate from last one. And then these 4 new ones are all going to be used in this workshop. We're going to add a little coin, and then we're going to add jumping, like a sound effect to it, and we're going to add background music. So once you get those downloaded, like any folder, we're going to start up the workshop. We're going to start up the Unity. Let me switch back. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually open up the project. So I haven't opened it up. I just put it right there. And then once it loads, I'll drag it to the side. And we're going to create a new folder. This is going to be the folder that holds our music and sound effects. You guys could put it in art, but it's kind of like you kind of want to keep them separated in case you have a lot of them. So it's all about organization. Okay, and this is exactly where we left off last time. So you'd go over to your assets, you'd make a new folder, you name it resources, and you would take the assets from where you downloaded them from, here, and you would just drag it over to there. So I'll download them and I'll put them into our assets folder. Okay, so here they are. I'll just put them into the resource. Oops, I have to actually open the resource. Put them into our resource folder. I have the coin and the jump, and I'll also have the puzzle dreams, which is the background music. That way we don't have to worry about it later. And I'll also have the new art that is the coin.png, like that. So you should have 4 things in your art and then only 3 things in your resources. Is everybody good with that so far? I guess that's like the most setup whatnot. Just another LinkedIn. Okay. So next, let me pull it up. Let me close this. Next, we are going to give credits to the things that we just downloaded because each of them was like free license only if you credit them. So I had the credits here. I thought they sounded nice, so I wanted to pick these rather than something I don't have to credit. And it's also nice to credit with whoever you're using, and only use it if they're like free to use. So the music was by him, and the sound effects was by Sound Ninja. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna expand what we did last time and create a prefab. So before we just had the platform like this. So now we're gonna select all the platforms. So the left, the middle, and the right. I'm gonna select it all, and we're gonna drag it from the hierarchy view into prefabs into, oh my god, did I drag it like, no, I didn't drag it like that. Wait, it was definitely like this. Wait 1 second. Okay, I'm definitely doing it right. I searched it up honestly, because you should be able to drag it from your hierarchy view into your prefabs folder. Is it working for everybody else? Because it should be just simple as that. I'm not sure why it's not working, because I specifically tested like 5 times because I got nightmares from it. Yeah, it's working for you. It's not working for me. I don't know why. It's so weird. Is it working for everybody else? Like now I'm wondering, like, is mine just like glitched? Because this is the same project as last time and it wasn't working for me. But I opened a new project to drag the parent object by itself. Oh. Wow, thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I was like, I could have sworn, yeah. Thank you. That was such a mix-up. Golf clap. Yeah. Oh my god. Thank you so much. You can leave it left edge or whatever you named it, but you can rename it to platform. And you can rename the prefab to platform as well. It doesn't actually matter if they're the same name because it's that blue lighting means that if you open it and you look in Inspector, you're going to see that it has a prefab attached to it now, unlike something else like Background, which doesn't have a prefab attached to it. Okay, so we did that so we could just drag platform onto our scene and make another platform. So we can make one like, let me select it. We can make one, move it like right here, so they have to jump around. Okay. So that was the first thing that we're gonna do, make our floors into a prefab. And then we're going to apply a camera to our background. So for the camera to our background, first thing we're going to do is you might have a canvas already onto your thing from last time. Just delete it and we're going to make a new one just from scratch. So we're going to go right click into our hierarchy and then do UI and then image. And then you can name it whatever you want. You can just leave it as image and rename background, or you can leave background as it is. But you want to select image and then go over to your art and then drag our asset into source image. And it's going to make our little background here. And then you want to drag it over your canvas, which is this background right here. And if people don't have the background, then like from scratch, the UI and then image, and then because I know it kind of used the one I already had, so it's gonna like appear really weird. So then you want to select canvas and change the screen space, the render mode, to camera, and then drag your camera over to the render camera. That way it's fixtured onto your camera. So when we move our player and that drags our camera along, it's gonna move the background along too. And then we can select the image, drag our background in a source image, and expand it to the whole size, like that. That way we have a nice background, and when we play, if I can move the zoom thing, when we play, we'll, our guy will fall and it'll move with our guy. And if our guy falls down off the map, you can see in the scene, it won't like show the Y, but it'll leave the background up there. Okay. So those are two small things to make our game a little easier to like do and make it a little nicer with the background. Next is we'll add some animations to our player, which is going to make him do like an idle stance going back and forth, and when you walk, just make him run. Or when you walk, make him walk. So select your player. You can do it in the hierarchy or on the scene. And then go at the top, click Window, Animation, and then Animation again. It popped up on my other screen, but it's gonna pop up this. And then with player selected, so he should have the bounding box, you wanna create a new animation for him. It's gonna ask you where you wanna put them. So I'm gonna change the directory to animations, and I'm gonna name it idle. It doesn't matter what you name it, because it's gonna make two files. It's gonna make an animation controller file, which changes the animation for the player, so we can switch back and forth. And it's going to make an actual idle animation that is what we're editing right here in our little editor. And I can show that in my little project folder. If I go to animations, it made two of them. It made the one for player, the controller, that's going to control the logic for it, which I'll go over in a little bit, and it's going to make idle. So for idle, all we have to do is get our art, go into the things that we already did with our sprite selector, and then drag them into with our player selected. So select your player and then drag them into this. That way we have our animation. I'm going to make it 1 second long. And if you play it, you can see him moving back and forth a little bit. Maybe in the green render, you can see it a little better. But it's kind of like glitchy. So we have to adjust where our keyframes are and how it works. So you can drop this down to see which keyframe you're working with. And we see the first one is him just standing still. The second one is him with his left foot or right up. And then the third one that doesn't last for any time is his left foot up. So we actually want to start with a foot up maybe, and then end with a foot down. So I just rearranged it. So now our first one is 1 foot up. It's going to stay like that until the middle, and it's going to put both foot down. And at the end, it's going to have 1 foot up. And to make it actually last for the end, you're going to go over, you can type it in here, 90, which is 1.5 minutes, and then click new keyframe, add keyframe right here. So now it's going to make like an empty keyframe over here that it's not empty because it has whatever, but it's not going to last anytime after that. So now when we play it, it's going to be him like going like that, back and forth. So I got a nice little animation. Right now, if we go into the game, it's actually going to start it because our animator makes it do it entry by default. So to open the animator, you want to go to animations and then double click player. There's our animator controller. So now we have our idle right here. before we actually add any logic to our animation, which is the next step, adding logic to our animation, we're going to make another animation for our player, which is him running. So you want to select your player object again. You can double click idle to open it. Make sure you have your player selected, and then click this little drop down, and then create new clip. And we can call it walking or running. I keep on switching between the two. I can't decide. So I'll just name it walking because, I don't know, I don't want him to be too fast or something. So once we have our walking, we can go back to art and copy these three into, which is our walking animation. And we're going to have to do some adjustments. I set it to 60 because that's a whole second by default, just so I can see what I'm working with. So the first one of this one is him facing right with no feet up, 1 foot up, and then the third one is 1 foot up again. So maybe we want to start with, I'll open this drop down again so I can see the sprites. Maybe we want to start with this one to begin with, it's just 1 foot up. And then halfway through at 30, then we want to put both feet down and then put them both up again. And then maybe at 90 milliseconds or 1.5 seconds, we'll add another keyframe. And this one will actually copy this one, both feet down, and we'll paste it at that keyframe, and we'll add another one at 2 minutes or 120 seconds. That's because we started with our foot up. So we're going to go foot up, foot down, foot up, foot down, or foot up, foot down, and then it's going to reset and it's going to be foot up. So now if we play the animation, if we look into our game, it's going to be walking like that. He's switching, alternating feet. You guys can make it faster. You can just smush them all down. You could also remove some of them if you don't want, but it is just like the smoothest one. Do everybody's good so far? I know I'm moving a little fast. Okay. So now we'll go back into our animator, which if it's not open, you can go to Window and then Animation Animator, and it'll open it for you. And now we'll add some logic to it. So first, we want to make it so that we can transition between idle and walking. So we'll right-click idle, and we'll make a transition. And we'll do the same thing from walking to idle. These transitions don't have any boundaries, so they actually will never transition. So we want to edit the boundaries of the transition. So first, we want to add a parameter to our animator that's going to change, and when it changes, it's going to check for these transitions to see if they're eligible. So we'll just call it walking speed, and we'll add it as a new float. Oops, I typed it in the search, walking speed. And we'll add it as a new float, so it's a float. So that's going to add it to our whole animator. So in our code, we're going to be able to set walking speed, and if it's a certain speed, then we'll activate our walking animation, and it'll do our walking animation. So for our first transition, we need to actually set the conditions for it. So we'll plus this plus sign, and it'll automatically fill in walking speed greater than 0. But we'll actually do greater than 0.01. That seemed to be like a good speed. You can add more zeros if you want less zeros, but sometimes it's like a little finicky then. You also don't want an exit time. So we want them to immediately start walking and stop walking. And then we're just going to do the opposite for the other one. So our walking speed is less than 0.01. We'll also remove the exit time. So now in our code, when we set walking speed to a certain number, it'll transition to our walking animation. If we actually set this to 1 and then we run our program, we know 1 is greater than that. So it's actually going to be running from the get-go, even if we're moving or not, because we set our walking speed to 1. If we set it to 0, it's going to go back to idle. So all we have to do is link our player's velocity, how he's moving, to our walking speed now. Okay. So how do we do that? So first, actually we're still going to be on the, oops, oh my God. I thought back would go back 1. So, let me put that back. Okay, so first, we're gonna open player movement, which is what has our logic for our game. Let me open my Visual Studio Code. Okay, there we go. So this is where we left off on our player movement. We only have the basic 3 keys. So we want to tie the animator to our player movement component for our player. So our player has a player movement component and it has an animator component. So we want to tie these two together. So how we're going to do that is we're going to make a reference to it here, public, and we want to reference our animator. So animator, and we can call it anything, animator, for just simplicity's sake. Once we actually set our animator like that, if we go back to Unity, once it reloads the code, it's going to have an additional thing that we can edit here, and we'll be able to drag our animator component into that, thus referencing our animator into player movement. That way we can do whatever we want with the animator's parameters over here. So our walking speed. So I'll set the default back to 0. So every single update, we want to change it just in case they're moving or not. So we can use our animator. I'm sorry, what was that? Okay, that scared me a little bit. If anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me, by the way. Like if I'm moving too fast or going over too much. Okay, I'll assume you guys are all good for now. So we want to access our animator, and we'll set the float that we made. Oops. We'll set the float that we made. That is, we named it walking speed. So walking speed. And we'll tie it to its velocity. So we'll get their velocity, paste, and then we'll access the x of it, because we don't want to do the animation if they're in the air. You can also set this at the end, but it's not going to really change anything with the physics, because the add force doesn't immediately happen. So it's not going to lag behind or anything if you're worried about that. The only problem with this is if they're moving to the left, it's not going to actually set them to walking, because it's going to be a negative number. So it's always less than 0. So we actually want to get the absolute value of it with the math class. So the math class has a mathf class has a ABS, which is absolute value, and we'll just wrap it in that. And that's all we have to do to get the absolute value. So now when we actually run it, let me open Unity. When we actually run it, it's first going to load our assets and scripts. And when we walk, it's going to show our animation.
Zach, I'm having an issue with my movement script.
Yeah, what's
Even
up?
though I basically have the code exactly the same, for some reason, when I tap A or D, I only move like a single step.
Okay, that might be because our movement is tied into the variables that we made over here, max speed and jump height. So jump height doesn't affect movement, only vertically. Your max speed might be like 2. So if our max speed is like 2, then it's going to look like probably what you're saying. Oh, it's too low. If it's too low, then it's going to be like steps.
I tested it and I just like threw my max speed to some random number. I have it on 50 right now and it's still doing the same thing.
It's still doing the same thing?
Yeah.
Did you make sure to use this as our force?
Let me double check.
Because that's what I think it might be. Unless maybe you edited the player's mass, which affects the force applied to him. That could be the case too.
Alright, I'll have to look into this a little bit more because I left everything pretty much exactly how I got it. So maybe it's something else.
So I had the problem with make sure that you use 2 separate functions for the jump and the running. That's a good point. Because get T down is just like 1 press, and then get key just that is multiple presses, so like that.
All right.
So if we only have 1 press, it's only going to do 1 single force every like down. So it might be that.
see. Okay, I think I got it.
Perfect, excellent. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to ask. This is like the main point of the workshop, for you guys to like learn and ask questions and stuff like that. So if everybody's good, so next we'll fix the issue of our guy not facing to the left, because he only faces to the right, which is kind of an issue. And then we're going to solve max speed and jumping in the air, which are both easier. So the issue with that is, right now we're not setting any rotation to our player, so we need to rotate him every single time he does it. We could make another animation with the left looking sprites that's in the sprite sheet, or we could just rotate our player. In my opinion, rotating him is really much easier, because we don't have to worry about rotations on the Z and whatnot. If he was rotating on the Z like he was tilting himself sideways, then rotating him wouldn't be advisable, because then his feet would be in another position. So to rotate him, all we have to do is actually set his rotation to some, I don't know how to pronounce, like quantino. Is how they store the rotation vector, which is the XYZ of the rotation. So we'll get our component, that is our rigid body, 2D, and then we will access its transform property, which is, we're just accessing it like, okay, we're accessing it like if we click player, we can see transform right here. So we're just accessing the rotation right here inside our code. And then we're going to access the rotation, and we're going to set it equal to a new, and this is the one I was talking about. It's like quaternonion. I don't know how to pronounce it, to be honest. If you actually hover over this, it just says the local and the position is stored differently and the velocity is stored differently. Like some are stored in vectors and some are stored in this. So we'll set its rotation to 0 along the x, and then 180, and then 0, and then another 0. The last 0, we don't have to be too concerned about. It's just because how it's storing the object in the space. What's important is that we're flipping it like this. When we're pressing A, which is to the left. So when we're pressing D to the right, we want to set it back to 0. And then we'll save and go back in Unity. And I'll press play. And now when we move left, we'll actually face that way. So now we got like a working animation and movement and rotation. Okay, now we'll set the max speed, which, to be honest, has been annoying from like the get-go, because he kind of flies off the screen right when we touch anything. But setting the max speed is pretty easy, actually. So use a different function other than update, because update and this other function, which is fixed update, operate at like different moments in the program. And we use fixed update in this case because we want to gather whatever update has already adjusted and then not fix it. It's kind of irrelevant to saying fixed. This fixed just means that it happens at set intervals rather than update, which just happens, I think, by the frames, or its relation to the frames. So it's not that fixed. It's kind of spontaneous. But we want to get whatever happens in that update, however they're moving, and then we want to kind of cap it, or we do want to cap it. So first, instead of doing what we have done up here, which is access the component every single time, we'll actually store it in a variable, which might be more familiar for people that have done object-oriented programming before. And we'll just store it just like that. I copied and pasted it from the top. So it's just the player being stored like that. After we do that, we'll actually write the logic to see if their velocity is more than the max speed or less than negative max speed. So we'll access the velocity, their x velocity in specific, and we'll see if it's greater than max speed. If it is, then we'll cap it. But for now, we'll write the other one, which is if their velocity along the x is less than negative max speed. And we'll cap it there too. So to cap it, we just want to set their velocity to what their velocity is right now, which we know that their x is greater than max speed, but we don't know their y. So in our new vector 2, we're going to use max speed, and then we're just going to get their current y velocity. That way, if they're mid-jump, it doesn't stop them suddenly. And we'll do the same thing for down here, except we'll do negative max speed. And after we do that and we load up Unity, now whenever his max speed, he's about to go faster than it, it's going to now cap it. So now my guy is moving only so fast. And because of how the physics engine works in Unity, on the floor, he's going to pick up speed slower than in the air, just because of friction. And so when he collides with the floor like that, he gets a little buffer in his speed because of how the physics engine works in Unity. He also jumps really high because I set his thing to like 10. Okay. So now that we've set the max speed for the player, we want to set the player jumping only when they're on the ground. This one is kind of easy too. So basically, all we need to do is add logic to when he jumps. So we know when he lands on the floor, he has to be in touch with the floor. So he has to be touching the floor. So we'll just write an if statement to see if he's touching the floor. So we'll access the physics engine, and then we'll say if they're touching some component. And inside this component, we'll just say a collider 2D. Like if our collider 2D is touching some layer, something like that. That's how you should interpret it. That's what it's asking for, because we're accessing this player's component. So if it's touching that, then we'll actually jump. So the only time we're touching that is when we're on the floor. Let me stop it and start it. So now, I don't think it loaded the script again. I didn't think I saved. Yeah, I didn't save. So now if we go back, we stop it. We actually spell it right. It says the error at the bottom. I read it. You should put is and not it. There. Okay, now if we go back and save it. Did I spell it wrong? Touching layers. Oh my god. Okay, now if we go back and save it, there's no error in our debug console. And we rerun it, we can only jump. If you see in our scene, we can't jump after we jump. We actually jump like almost perfectly to the camera. Now we jump a little higher because we're on a higher platform. Okay, perfect. So now we're gonna add music to our game, which in my opinion is the most exciting thing because I like music. It's like one of my many passions. And it's actually pretty easy to add. So first things first, we have to decide which object we're gonna add the music to, because it's kind of game object based. We can't just have our something else adding it. So what we can add it to is our player. So we can just play it every single time our player object is in the scene. So we'll add a component and we'll do audio listener. Where's the audio source? Audio source. I don't know why I thought listener. Listeners, if there's an audio clip near it. Okay, audio source, which takes in an audio clip, right? So we already have our prospective, what are they called? Like little clips that we have. So we'll just add it to our audio clip, our audio source, and we'll adjust the settings so that they are what we want. So play on awake just means when the game object enters the scene, our player object enters it immediately. So that's perfect. We want the music to start when we enter. Loop means after it's done, it loops. So we want it to loop because it's like our background game music. And all we have to do is add our puzzle dream, drag it to audio clip, and that's it. Now when we play it, wow, it's blasting in my ear. We can adjust the volume right here. So we can adjust to like 0.2 maybe. It might not be as loud for you guys. Okay, yeah, 0.2 seems fine for me. I can actually share computer sound. So now you guys will hear it. I'm not sure if it's loud, so I'll actually set it to 0.1 just in case, so it doesn't blast your guys' eardrums. But now when we play the game and we're inside the game console, you guys should be able to hear the music, right? Yeah, now that I clicked out of it, it stopped it, but once I click back in, if you click out of it, it stops the animations too. So it's actually really easy to add that background music. It's a little more complicated to add the sound effect of jumping and stuff, which is what we'll do further in the workshop. Let me stop sharing it so you guys don't get annoyed by it. Okay, perfect. So add music to our game, add sound effects to our game. What sound effects do we want to add? We want to add a jump, and maybe when we add the coin. So we're going to make a system that allows for both of them without a lot of effort, because it has to be tied to something, but our player one already has this. So, oops, I'm sorry. So we don't want to add more and more because it's going to get like unmanageable. So we'll actually make an empty game object to handle our create empty, our sound. We can call it sound manager, or we can call it anything we want. So our sound manager is going to actually handle our audio clips. So we'll do the same thing as we did for the last one, which is we'll add an audio source to it, but we're not going to add an audio clip to it. And the reason for that is we're going to access the audio source in the code, and we're going to be able to pass an audio clip so that it can play a one of that audio clip. So when we jump, we only want to play that jump that one time, and when they jump again, we want to play it again. Or when they collect a coin, it's going to change audio clip to collect a coin, and then it's going to play it once. So we don't want to play on awake, and we don't want to loop. I'm also going to set the volume down just in case, so I don't get assaulted by the music again. Okay. So, something in the chat. Did you say create empty? Yeah, create empty. So right click on your hierarchy and then create empty. And then we'll have an empty game object. It's not gonna, you can move it anywhere you want in your scene. It's not gonna display anything. It's not important where it is. But what's important is that it has that audio source attached to it. Am I gonna participate in Global Game Jam? I really want to, I really do. I've been talking to him about it. So maybe. I'd really like to though. Okay. So next is that we'll actually attach a script to this. So we can add a new script as a component, new script, and we'll name it, I don't know, sound manager script. And we'll create an add. By default, it's going to add it to our assets folder right here. I'm going to open my assets folder. I'm going to drag it to the scripts. So it's in our scripts folder. And now we got it right here. So I'll open my Visual Studio Code, or actually I have to open Sound Manager, yeah. So we'll have our Sound Manager in here. So this class is actually going to be pretty simple. A lot of implementations, because this is a common feature in Unity games, a lot of implementations use a static implementation, so we don't have to attach it to the components all the time like we have been doing. Like we have to drag it to the next one. Like we can access it statically, which is basically not without the game object. But since I want to start like at a slower pace, I don't want to go jumping into like something that's more abstract, and I want to do something more practical that has like a line of thought. So first, we'll actually just store the audio clips here. So we want to minimize, or we are minimizing our, this actually would be our audio source, but we'll define audio clips. We're minimizing how much like UI in the Unity we have, so that we don't have to keep on adding into that every single time. It's like kind of like a code base outside of it. So we'll store our audio clips, and then we want to grab our audio source from our component, like our game object, because this is going to be attached to our audio manager game object. So first, we'll actually set our audio source to that component. So we'll get the component, and it'll be the audio source. Next, we're going to load jump and coin. So to load them, we'll do resources.load. We'll put the type in the generic tag, so audio clip, and then the name of the file. So in this case, it's going to be jump for jump. And for coin, we can copy that and paste it, and it'll be coin. Oops, I'm trying to double click it so I can do that. Okay. So now that we've loaded it, we want an actual function so that when we grab our sound manager script as a component, so we'll actually do get component sound manager script in our other ones, and then we'll run a method in it. So we'll create a method to play it. So we want it public. We want it not to return anything, and we'll do like play sound or play. I think sound's a little repetitive because you have to get the script, but you can do either one you want. Then we'll pass a string and a clip. Make sure your string has a lowercase s because it's C#. So it has a lot of similarities to other languages, but if you notice how all the methods have like capitals and then some of these have lowercase, it's a little flipped for some stuff than what most people might be used to. So we'll get the clip and we'll see if it is what they're passing in, jump. And if it is, we'll play jump. And we'll do the same thing for coin. So if our clip equals coin, we will play the coin. And we'll actually add that now. It's really simple. So we'll grab our audio source, which is what we got our component from. And we can play one shot. And we can input whatever audio clip we want. We have two clips, coin and jump. This one we want coin, and the other one we want jump. So we just pass those two, and we do play, and we input jump, it's going to play our jump sound effect. And we do play and input coin, it's going to do our coin sound effect. Now we want to implement that into our player for our jump. We haven't made the coins yet. So all we can do really is for our player. So first we have to add our sound manager script to our sound manager. So we'll hover over sound manager as our sound manager script. Okay, good. Next, for our player object, we want to add the sound manager script. Where is it? Player. We'll add the sound manager script to it. Okay. So we're using that sound manager script, and inside our player movement, we're going to reference it here. So we'll get the component of the sound manager script. Now I know, actually we'll do it the other way. So don't put get component and actually remove the latest component. We'll do it the other way. I thought this way would be simpler, but we'll keep it separate. Okay, so remove it from your player. Actually what we'll do instead is we'll add another reference to our player movement. So inside our player movement, which, let me open this. Oops, oh my god. Inside our player movement here, we will add another reference to a object. So specifically we want, let me go back to this. We want our sound manager object. Oh, why is it typing in twice? Okay, we want our sound manager object, and we'll name it manager. And this will be set inside our Unity GUI. And down here, when we have our manager, we'll do manager.play. Oh, can you guys still hear me? Because it just said I've been signed out.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, Zoom's glitching out on my screen. Oh god. Okay, I'll just continue. So we'll play the jump here, all lowercase, except plays capital. We'll go back into our Unity editor and we'll add. We should add it to our using. Yeah, it'd actually be easier to add the component. I don't want to add too much complex stuff. So we'll keep this. We'll actually rename our sound manager to our component, which is our sound manager script. And with our sound manager script, we'll still keep this code and we'll instantiate it here. So we'll say manager equals get component, and we'll put our sound manager script right here. So we'll do it like this. So all I've done is change this to sound manager script, and then I got it in my start. I still kept the play right here. So when we go back over here, we won't have any debug errors, and we're actually not using sound manager. So we're just keeping it local to the player. So we actually don't need it. Is everybody good so far? I know I switched it up a little bit. I was deciding which one would be simpler. Okay. So now that we added our jump, we'll add our coin to the game. So we're almost done. We're at like the last little round. So we can add an animation to our coin, but it's going to be the same way that we did our player. And I kind of want to keep it to new content. So for now, we'll just take our coin, we'll edit it with our sprite editor, and we're just going to take the first. So to add an animation for it, you want to take all of them, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to open window animation, but I'm pretty sure you guys can do that by yourself. So one thing that I didn't do before I opened sprite is that I told it what type of sprite it is. I still did single, but it should be multiple. And now we're going to open our sprite editor. So now I can actually select, because before I thought it was one sprite. So we'll just drag this over here. So I took the one coin, and I can name it coin 0 is fine, actually. We'll close it, and it asks us to apply. Now if we open the drop down, we'll have coin 1 or coin 0. We could do that for all of them and just add a simple animation. If we have time at the end, we'll do it. So we can drag our coin here, and it's gigantic, actually. So what we want to do, actually, is for our coin, since we're going to actually have a collider on it because we want it to touch and stuff, we're actually going to make a prefab for it. But first, let's edit it a little bit. So let's make it smaller. We can see in our game menu how it'll look. So I want it about that small. And we'll actually add some components like our box collider. So that way we can touch it. So we'll add a box collider 2D. It makes the box collider automatically. You can make it a circle collider. But I'm just making a box collider because it doesn't really need to be a circle collider. I can see how, like, if they pass by here or whatnot, it would matter. But I think it's just simpler to have everything as box colliders. And we'll set this is trigger to true. That way, it's not going to affect our rigid body of our player. What that means is when a game object has their collider as is true, they're just going to pass through it. So if our player had it is true on that, like they checked it, our player would pass through the floor actually, because it's just to trigger an event basically. So we actually want to click that true for our coin. And then we'll add our sound script. So we'll add a new script, or actually we can just search for it here and it'll put up, or we can drag it to it. So we can go to scripts, sound manager, and drag it to our coin over here into our components. That way we can access it using this. Or we actually don't need it because we'll play the sound via the player component, player game object. So we just want to keep it simple with box collider and render. And then we'll make the prefab of it by dragging it to prefabs. So that way we can drag more coins as we see fit. Okay, so I made a couple coins there. Now we'll actually add the logic to our coin object. So here's where it comes in, the is trigger, like comes into play. We'll make a private void on trigger enter 2D. The 2D is really important, by the way, because all of our colliders and stuff are in 2D. Whoa, that's supposed to be a bracket. We'll input the other collider 2D right there. And we'll test if their tag is a coin. So if it is a coin, then we want to destroy the other, which is the coin. We want to remove the coin. And we want to, with our audio player, which is, we named it manager, we want to play another sound, and we'll play coin. We'll end it off. The only thing that we have to do now is actually edit our prefab, because we haven't actually set a tag to it. Remember in our code that we set coin tag is, the tag is equal to coin, but our tag is not equal to coin. So we want to add a new tag. We'll add the coin tag. We'll go back to our coin, and then we'll actually have coin available, and we'll select it. When we do this, it didn't change it for any of our other prefabs. So what we can do is we can click our prefab in our prefabs folder and change it here. This one will update it for all of our existing ones. So this has coin, this has coin, this has coin. These platforms won't have coin, and this coin will have coin now. So we can edit them individually, or we can edit it as a prefab over here. So now we have our trigger and stuff set up. My ID saying destroy does not exist, but I did not spell destroy, I spelled destroy, which is unfortunate. So destroy. Okay. Yeah, there. That time I spelled it right. Okay. And once we reload it, we don't have any errors in our debug console at the bottom. So if we run it, our player will fall, and then when we touch it, nothing happened. Ooh, the music's blasting my ears. Okay. It says object reference is not that of an object. And here my debug console says this. So if I double click this, actually it'll tell me. So other.tag is not of an object, it's saying. Object reference instance of another object. Did I spell other wrong? It should be accessing the coin reference. I don't think I spelled anything wrong. Again, I spelled something wrong, it's gonna throw an error at me. So I'm just checking. Okay, perfect. I know what I did wrong. We have to actually access the game object of the collider 2D. So we're accessing it backwards. So destroy takes in a game object, but before I was destroying the collider 2D, which is just the component of something. Just how we got the rigid body component. I was destroying that instead of the actual game object. So if we reload it, these errors are from the last one, so it hasn't updated since I ran it. But if we run it now, when we run into a coin, it disappears it. So even though it disappeared it, it's saying that our manager is running into an error because it doesn't exist. So even though it destroyed it, it's saying your manager doesn't exist. So instead of accessing it like manager, I'm gonna try like this. That way we're grabbing our sound scripts just straight from there. And if we run it, it should give us more information. So I think it's a problem with our sound manager script. So it's not loading the coin sound. So it's destroying the coin, but it's not loading the coin sound, which is weird. Let me make sure I have the coin sound here. Oh, I spelled, no. I'm not sure why it's not loading the coin sound. I think I missed something small. I always do that. Let me try something really quick. We're right at the end too. To see if this adds it. Is the sound connected? The sound should be connected through the sound manager script, which we defined. If I open it in Unity, Visual Studio Code. Our sound manager script is right here, which you defined it kind of equally. We said jump and coin. I'm not sure why it's not doing the sound actually, because it should actually do it. It's the same logic for jump. I think we'll skip that. I'll send you guys an update in the channel, because it should be loading it. If that's okay with everybody else, like I'll send you guys an update with it. Oh, Stephanie, you're right. Yeah, I might have messed up with something like editing one instead of all of them. You're right. I might have done that. I mean, it might be the resources.load method. So what we could do instead of that is we could actually, to our sound manager script, we can, that's a good suggestion. It's a quick fix, like a quick edit. We'll just change our audio clips to public, and we'll drag them in instead of loading them. So we just changed it to public. I removed when I instantiated them, and inside our player object, we'll go down to our, where is it? Oh, it could be that I actually didn't add the, I didn't add the sound manager script to player. I guess I skipped right over that. Oh my God, my bad. I remember that we had the event system at first, or the sound manager at first. So guys, go into player and then add the sound manager script by dragging it from your scripts to here, and it should appear like this. And then go to your resources and grab and drag the respective audio clips down, like that. So now, yeah, now it works for me. That was the culprit. We didn't add the actual script, so our code was not added to the actual thing, so it never actually ran it. Woohoo! Yeah, we got it. Excellent. So it should have the coin. It should delete the coin. We can add an animation to the coin. I know we're a little after, so I want to see if we can wrap it up. If you guys want to stay and do that, that's fine. I think we have not that much. So we already added the collision to our coin, and I just wanted to go over our workshops again. The game dev 2, I should have updated it automatically. We have the code orientation, which is the internal one, the web and machine learning, the surprise workshop, and the track meetups. And that's the end of the workshop. If you guys want to go over like quickly at the end doing the animations, you guys can stay around for a little bit because it's only 4. Global Game Jam starts at 5. But I think you guys are going to be able to do that from when we did the player animation. It'll just be for fun. Do you guys have any questions? Like if your code isn't working, now's the time to speak up. But the workshop's over. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.